Natassia.
And we were wondering,
are you free for coffee?
Welcome, welcome.
Guys, this is a very different show. This is different, kind of. Like, it's our typical show review. And just so you know, both the shows we're discussing can be found on Netflix. But this is different. Like, it's a different love thing.
Okay. One of the movies is Goyo. Is it? I think I'm pronouncing it right.
That's how I've been saying it.
And it's fiction, and it's about an autistic man who discovers love. And Tell Them You Love Me is a documentary about a man with cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities who is nonverbal, who allegedly finds love with a counselor. So
allegedly is that's
the word.
That's
to
the
be
word.
clear, Goyo is fiction. So, and it's a highly functional man with autism, has a job, he speaks. I'm thinking it's probably Asperger's. Didn't you feel like,
yes, that was my takeaway.
And he falls for a newly separated older woman with children. And although he's inexperienced, he finds his way to love. And the key word is he can communicate, he's able-bodied, and he's really, other than having some of the signs of Asperger's in terms of being very
rigid,
meticulous about certain things, obsessing about a certain topic or something. He's very highly functioning.
Yes. And he's sociable too.
Yes, he's sociable. He has a job. He has money, because it seems like his parents had money. He's kind of wealthy when you think.
He ain't doing bad, that's for sure.
So it's a really different kind of circumstance. Now in Tell Them You Love Me, the disabled man, what was his name? He wanted to be called D-Man, but I forget it. What was his name?
What was his real name though? Guys, I'm gonna look it up, because that's what he wanted to be called, was D-Man. And so now I'm trying to remember his actual, like, his given name.
So he was severely disabled. He was nonverbal, but his brother, who was a doctor.
Derek. So Derek Johnson is D-Man. Okay. His brother was a PhD candidate during the course. Had since finished. Yes. You're right. He had since finished. Yes.
So he particularly believed that there was a spark of intelligence in his brother. Like, when he would be with him and talk to him and all the things, like the brother understood. He was able to communicate, like when he wanted to eat and when, certain things, he could communicate that to them. But he believed that if there was some way that they could get through to him so they could communicate. However,
and not so much get through to him, because it seemed as though he was comprehending. I think the issue was him being able to articulate it back.
That's
back
right.
to them.
You're right. So anyway, during one of his courses, a professor he heard speak, he specialized in assistant communication, which was something that her parents, who were, I guess they were professors too.
They were professors and occupational therapists.
They had developed this technique to help people like him that are kind of locked in their bodies and kind of spastic. So it's hard for them to control their emotions. So they would need someone to kind of help them. So he heard her talk and he thought, wow, this is great. So he contacted her. I have a brother, yada, yada. She comes over, does her thing. She's the one that said, who is D-Man? And they told her it was a counselor that he'd had before
years
that helped
ago.
him walk, that helped teach him how to walk. So that she had no way of knowing that. So I guess the sticky wicket is the assistant communication. Some people believe it's kind of a hoax.
Right.
But there are people, there was another young lady, yes, with cerebral palsy, although not as bad.
But very similar communication delays, not as bad. However,
not as bad.
Very similar communication delays, and it did work.
It changed her life.
Yes,
she was able to communicate.
Yeah, she went to school,
be productive,
yes.
all the things. So I went back and forth between.
We did, guys. When I tell you this rode us like we were $2 hookers, we talked about this. So just, I guess, to give a little insight, I have an uncle who, and before any of you get offended, you have to think of my age. And spoiler alert, my uncle is over 100 years old. And yes, he is still alive and he is still very mobile and actually is in amazing shape to be 102 because May just passed. And so my uncle was declared legally retarded. And this was many years. This was years before I was born. And that was his diagnosis as well. It
was mentally retarded and cerebral palsy. Those were his diagnoses.
And my uncle was declared mentally retarded. And for context, he was a slave. Yes, an actual slave. No, not a sharecropper. Yes, an actual slave. And he had multiple strokes in the sun. Like seizure, stroke type of things that, you have to think they're not like they're taken to a hospital. So this is just what's documented in his medical files. He had a love interest who was a woman who was able-bodied, able-minded, and they got along, at least in that department. And my family's opinion was a little different than what you see in the documentary. And it was, if everyone's disease-free and he's happy, my dad was like, let him experience life. Like everyone else gets to have sex. Like why can't he? And she was past childbearing age. And so it was just a joke to us, kind of like, okay, well, everybody can get it. And, we had a very different view. Do I think he was able to make the decision? I mean, not in the same way that you or I could, but
well, it was kind of eye-opening to me because, you've seen people with disabled with those types of problems,
mm-hmm.
and they have certain tics or their body moves in a certain way.
That's involuntary.
Right. And we equate that with intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And she's saying, no, that's just what their body does.
Which is true.
Which is true. And it was kind of an aha moment for me because I thought that is true. We tend to look at that and say, well, they're XYZ.
There must be a limitation and there may not be.
And because she grew up around this,
mm-hmm.
her prejudices were not there.
Right.
Like they are for me. I'm
mm-hmm.
just speaking for myself. I'm seeing a person and I make a determination based on some of the things they do or their body. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she does not do that, that was eye-opening for me. And mind you, their romantic relationship did not start for like over a year or 2 years or something.
Yes, it was some time.
They were in it, just, as a counselor and a patient
right.
for a long time. So
right.
It wasn't anything going on. And then it turned into
a sexual relation, a romantic,
and then,
I wish
I'm not gonna make a
determination.
I really don't know.
I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And if I'm being honest, guys, I don't know. And I don't even want to say that I'm neutral or that I'm Switzerland because I do have opinions about it.
I think the biggest question is who deserves love, who deserves affection, who deserves sex. That's what it kind of makes you think about that. Because you are different, or if you have a delay or a disability, are you any less deserving?
Right.
And that's the question. That's really the question. So these two things, while these two men are very different, number one, they're both men.
They're both men.
These are not children. They're both grown men with different degrees of disability,
mm-hmm.
but still disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And because one is verbal and one isn't, does a nonverbal one mean that he doesn't deserve love or affection or doesn't want that?
Right.
and it goes into, y'all remember we did a show, this has been a long time ago, with like body differences, like a couple.
Oh yeah, we did.
One is very
really
good looking
skinny
and one maybe is not so good looking, and
or
one
really
is real
skinny and really large,
really heavy, and all those things. And people get into that, and if you have to match, and if you have to, why would this really good looking person be with somebody average, and all those kinds of questions. And it kind of ties into that. Number one, you really can't make a determination in who loves who.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the strangest, oddest couples work.
Yeah.
And you just looking at them from the outside looking in, it looks
you would not
odd
have put them
and weird,
together.
but they're happy and it's totally fine. So that's some of it. And it's like, how bad do you have to be where you just opt out of love? Like, is it just kind of like, I'm just so messed up, or society says I'm so messed up that I don't get to have sex. I don't get to anybody to hold my hand or hug me or be affectionate to me. And that is sad to me. And I don't know that anybody has that right to determine for another person. If you can find love, if there is somebody who connects with you on that level, shouldn't they be able to engage in a loving relationship, even if it's not sexual, but just a loving, caring, affectionate relationship? I mean, do they not deserve that?
There is a review on Rotten Tomatoes by a young lady who has cerebral palsy.
Okay.
And the review name, if you all look on Rotten Tomatoes, it's Kirsten B is her handle. And she has cerebral palsy, according to what she has, written on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm going to say her take, I kind of agree with. So really, she starts off saying that it's really difficult that most able-bodied viewers think that because he has a disability, he's undeserving, which kind of goes into what you were saying. And she said that she thinks that Derek had the right to a loving relationship, just like anyone else. And Anna may have believed that she really loved him. The issue that this reviewer has is that Anna, was in a position of power over him. And the counselor, the professor. Yes. And so she said that, she doesn't see this as any different of a story, any different of a story of teachers taking advantage of students. So in other words, his condition or his diagnosis is not the issue. It's the power play, which we did talk about.
The power
Remember,
dynamic.
We talked about the boy, they got married, they ended up divorced. He was like 13 years old. She was married, went to jail. She was a teacher.
But then, it is a power thing, but then that's illegal.
It's illegal,
children,
right?
But right. I know what you're saying. It's almost like it's a professor-student thing, even though if they're an adult.
Yes.
And
she said maybe
Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing, that power.
And she said maybe if she had not already been a married teacher, it might have been a little more acceptable. But she was very uncomfortable.
Yes, FYI, she was married.
She was married, guys, with kids, married with a son and a daughter, I believe. And so she said she was really bothered. She continues to say that she's really bothered that most people didn't even try to get Derek's perspective. And remember, we talked about that. We talked about, his prom picture, for example. He's very affectionate with the young lady with whom he attended prom with. Very, very affectionate. And that's, very evident. And then the mother goes on, Daisy goes on to say that ever since this encounter with Anna, ever since this relationship with Anna, he has been attempting to masturbate. So now she just keeps him medicated.
Sedated.
Sedated. So that he doesn't.
Which is...
Yeah. And so then it's like, but you keep him sedated, so he will probably never have another shot at a romantic relationship. And her final sentence is, able-bodied people's tendency to infantilize those of us who struggle with what comes naturally to them is so infuriating.
Oh, well, like I said, he is a grown man.
He's a grown man.
He's not he's
Baby,
not a
he's
child.
My age. He ain't no child.
He's a grown man. the mother was so indignant.
Yes.
And like basically she raped my son.
Yes.
And some of that is, your family, it's hard to get out of a family. Or, for them to see you any different than you've always been. If you do something, if you accomplish something, now that's not his case. This is,
this is generally speaking.
But this is everybody. It's so hard for them to see you in differently.
Any other light.
Any other way. And that was some of it I felt with his mom. And of course she's, the father left when I guess he was diagnosed, or when
he was when she was having hospitalization issues
that
with
was
him as
a
a baby
thing. And then so she raised these two boys on herself. She's kind of martyred herself to take care of this man that's her son. And so that's his role in the family.
Yeah.
Being the disabled son that we have to do stuff for. I mean, it kind of is.
And I'm going to say this, and I told Lisa this when we kind of began to unpack this. It was giving a little Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Now, I am not saying that his condition is not real. I'm not saying that his inabilities or abilities are not valid. Not saying that. I am saying that in the same way that Claudine Blanchard made her whole life about, I'm caring for my daughter.
This illness.
This illness, condition. Right? That just became her whole life, her whole identity. There are some key moments when you're watching this documentary where you see Derek had to play his role, baby. He couldn't get too well, because then
what is her life about?
What is her life about? Because
what has she done with her life?
It's the whole story.
Because
I quit my job
40
to take
years,
care of
30 years,
right.
I've been doing this, and then that means something.
So that's her identity
in relation to me.
Yes.
Right.
And so that's always really dangerous.
And then I had to wonder. Now, the brother seemed like he was a little on it and trying to maybe step outside the box a little bit and get him some help or some, a different therapy or something. I wondered, was there hope for Derek to be a little better? Now, I'm not, mental retardation, cerebral palsy is what it is. But, new things are discovered all the time. But I was just thinking in terms of having a full life, right, and being a little more independent, maybe being in a group home, maybe being around some other
when that came
young
up,
adults.
His mother became very enraged.
Just friends.
And even something Lisa pointed out that, again, this is just me using my own uncle. And you have to think my uncle is 102 years old. So being really honest, what exists now in terms of therapies and just getting on YouTube or Reddit, none of that existed, baby. They were lucky to get a newspaper.
Yes.
So, and couldn't afford that. So the fact that D-Man is still in a diaper and is not potty trained, I have an issue with that. I have an issue with the fact that he didn't learn to walk until he was much older, not because you kind of kept him in this baby.
Yes, because, he was able to be taught.
Somebody
taught him.
Yes.
So it wasn't like he couldn't. He just...
He was not exposed to the opportunity.
I didn't know if the resources were not there,
right?
If they lived in, it kind of was like a rural. Did it seem kind of rural to you? Community. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I remember looking it up, and it was one of the poorer areas in that state.
So some of it might have been resources, both in the city and state, and their family resources.
Right.
Some of it was in that community, were there even those services? Right. Like they might not even had a group home for people like that, or I don't know.
They did because Anna spoke to the brother about it, remember? And when they brought it to the mom was absolutely not. You not taking my bed.
Because she was saying he could live in the basement or something like that. Yes, remember? Because the brother had kind of lived in the basement for a while.
Yes.
I don't know. You guys watch it. It really, wow. It's just a wow. It really gets you thinking. And
it does.
I still have not decided one way or the other, but it is an eye opener, and it's very riveting, and it just really makes you think. I just had never thought about any of this.
And I think my whole thing with her is like, with the whole story, nobody was right. I don't feel like the mom did him. I don't feel like the mom had his best interest at heart. I don't think Anna took a step back and really kind of took some of her own baggage out of it. I think the brother was going in the right direction, but then he sided with the mama. And if you watch it, you're going to see where the brother takes a turn. The brother takes a definite turn, and it really becomes more about, you ain't gonna come from my mama. Like, if my mama said that's what it's gonna be. Yeah. But then that's not necessarily what's best for Derek, for D-Man. And so,
and this actual technique, this assistant communication,
yes.
Like we said, for some people it really unlocked, but then of course they show the other side where there's people that were abusing it, and it was really the person assisting doing the thing, and making them say. So, oh my gosh, it's such a cluster. Really, it is. But it's really kind of must-see TV. I think it's a really important topic, and it did make me confront my own biases.
Yeah.
And how I view people that are disabled.
Yeah.
And so I want to do better.
Yeah.
Because everyone deserves love. They deserve affection. And if they're able and want to, they deserve sex, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So I'm not telling you how to do it, but my thing the whole time was like, well, he is grown.
Yes, he's a grown man. So these are not children. So we're not talking about pedophiles. These are grown-ups. But you guys watch those.
Oh, and please tell us what you think.
Please.
I'm serious. I really want to know.
Wow. I go back and forth, but let us know what y'all think. Up next, simple meditative affirmations at work. But first, a message from our sponsor.
During hard times, it can get really difficult if you don't have anyone to talk to. Being alone with your thoughts can be an isolating feeling that can allow negativity to consume you.
This is why we are sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to.
There is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapist network that gives you access to help that may not be available in your area. You just fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you get matched with the therapist in under 48 hours.
Then you schedule secure video and phone sessions. Plus, you can exchange unlimited messages, and everything you share is completely confidential. You can request a new therapist at no additional charge anytime.
Join the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. So many people use BetterHelp that they are currently recruiting additional therapists in all 50 states.
Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/free-for-coffee. That's betterhelp.com/free-for-coffee.
What do you have for this week?
I am expecting breakthroughs in my life.
You better ask somebody. Okay, I like that. I am expecting breakthroughs in my life. Okay, so mine is, I am guided by faith, not fear.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, those are winners. Yeah. I like that. Okay, loves, thank you for pulling up a chair and joining us for coffee. Please subscribe to Are You Free for Coffee podcast wherever you are listening. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and definitely give us some feedback if you watch Tell Them You Love Me or Go-Yo on Netflix. We hope that you find joy in the little things. Till next time.
Part of the Boundless Audio Podcast Network.